Here comes the sun, do-do-do-do. Here comes the sun, and I say it's all right.
Hello, Fortitude audience. Thank you so much for joining us. My name is Heather Kittelson, and I am your host, and I am sitting next to my handsome, hunky husband, Amos.
Hello.
Who is the co-host. And today in our studio, we have the pleasure of having Tom Henderson here with us. So thank you for being here.
Hey, man, it's great to be here. Thanks for the invitation.
You just recently completed another year of RESGEN and date night.
Yeah, so you are correct. We did our 8th RESGEN Men's Summit recently, and then this just a few days ago finished our 6th night of date night comedy, 6 years of date night comedy, which is now ballooned into two events back to back. And so this year we had over 950 couples between the two nights, and yeah, we're grateful.
It is so neat to I guess a lot of our audience is not local, but in the Sioux Falls, South Dakota area, Tom has a beautiful, incredible mission that God put on his heart many years ago, and it's called RESGEN. And so we'll get into that in just a second. But what he's referring to is a big summit just filling men's hearts full of incredible content and just the Holy Spirit. And then also you involve the ladies and bring on a date night. So we love going. We've gone 5 years in a row and are just grateful that you have offered such an awesome opportunity to us and to the community. So
we've gone together to the date night together.
Yeah.
I go to the men's thing.
You go to Yes. I would. There's so many women who are like, I wished I could be there. I wish I could go. Can I go? Can I?
No. I like the time.
Yeah.
Yes,
it's good guy time.
So good.
Good quality guy time.
Well, I will not entrench on your good guy quality time. So, Tom, I'm excited for the audience to get to know you a little bit better. Your story is a beautiful story of just you're an overcomer, man. You've gone through some stuff. But let's start out with who you are today. So tell us about you.
Yeah, so my name's Tom Henderson. I'm a follower of Jesus. I'm a husband to Laura. I'm a father to Isaiah and Chase. And then, as you mentioned, I'm the founder of RESGEN, the RESGEN Men's Summit, the RESGEN Giving Life Podcast, date night comedy in Sioux Falls. And so, I'm completely focused on doing everything I can do here at the ripe age of 48 years old to pour myself out into other people and to add value to their lives. And if that's through putting on the events like you spoke of, or through the opportunities that God's opened up for me to speak at other events around the country and corporate events and that kind of thing, it's however God wants to use me. And for the longest time, Amos and Heather, I was focused on teenagers. In September, it'll be 25 years of full-time ministry that I've been in. I got my first youth pastor gig when I was 23 years old in Oregon City, Oregon. Back when I got hired, the senior pastor said, Tom, you don't know how to preach. You don't know how to teach. You don't know how to manage a budget. You don't know how to speak to parents. You don't know how to really organize a calendar. So it's super uplifting.
So you're like, so I don't see the problem here.
Yeah, I'm like, why aren't you jumping at the chance to hire this cat? He said, but here's the deal. I can teach you all that. Mm-hmm. What I can't teach you is heart. Mm-hmm. And that's what you do have. And I had a full heart and just enough confidence to kind of step out into the youth ministry world. And so God allowed me the opportunity alongside my wife, Laura, and my boys when they came along to do youth ministry in a variety of different capacities with local church in Oregon City for 6 years. Then God moved us back to Sioux Falls, was a part of a citywide organization and helping students learn how to share their faith in the middle school and high school hallways and classrooms. Then eventually went on working with Lifelight and started doing a lot of touring with bands. That's where I really started speaking a lot. I went on the road with bands and learned how to share the gospel to an auditorium or an arena full of people that weren't there to hear me. They were there to listen to music, and I had to earn the right to be heard within about 30 seconds. And then God just ordered us And I say ordered because I dragged my feet for about a year and a half. That's a whole nother story. But launched RESGEN in 2010. And now here we are almost 14 years later and seeing how God has morphed that to being focused on students to now being focused on men, marriages, parenting, and doing what we're doing now.
Did you go to school for ministry?
So I actually, when I graduated high school, I went to USD to major in pre-med and partying. And what I found is that if you party a lot and then you don't go to class, that's going to lower your GPA. And that's not going to look really good on applications to med school. And so what ended up happening was in between my freshman and sophomore year, I was a singer all throughout my childhood and into college. And I tried out to be part of a touring group that would travel for the entire summer. So there were 6 of us on this tour, 3 guys and 3 gals, and then the directors. We learned an hour-long show where we sang, danced, acted, and all that kind of stuff. And we traveled up through Canada, all the way across Canada, down the western United States, and then back up to Sioux Falls. We did 50 shows in 60 days.
Wow.
At camps.
What was it called?
It was called Shine. It was put on actually through Sioux Falls Seminary.
Oh.
They were using it as kind of a recruiting tool or something like that. And but I just saw it as a way, to be honest with you, just to do what I love to do, and that's perform.
Yeah.
And that's kind of a part of my childhood is just I performed however I needed to perform in order to get the attaboys and the accolades that I desired in my life. And I love the stage because, especially like in the acting world, you could play a specific character.
Escape.
It was a way to just kind of to be someone else and be someone that maybe the audience would have either an affinity towards or that would be like the villain or whatever, right? But the whole goal was to portray them in a way that is, enjoyable. So I got on this tour, and about 3 weeks into the tour, this was back when you actually, if you wanted to communicate with someone, you couldn't send a text message or an email. You had to actually write something on a piece of paper and then fold it and put it in something called an envelope. And then you had to lick a little square thing and put it in the corner and put it in a mailbox.
Yeah.
Do you remember mail?
I do.
Yeah. And so...
Did you give it to the guy on the horse?
Well, so that's what Laura had to do, especially when we were up in Canada. So she had to find out where we were going to be and mail letters ahead of time to whatever host home we were at or the church we were going to be performing at, camp or whatever. Wow. Well, about 3 weeks into that tour, Laura and I had only been dating for about a year at the time, not even quite a year. About 6 months. She and I were servers at TGI Fridays. She trained me how to be a server. We started dating. And then I went on this tour. Well, in the letter that I received about 3.5 weeks in, the letter said, you're on this tour for completely the wrong reasons. You're on there for the glorification of yourself. You're on there to build your platform. And this is not what you're on the tour for. This tour is for the glorification of the Lord. And so you have a couple choices. Either A, you get right with Jesus and make this about him and not about you, or you drop off the tour because this is not something that God wants you to be doing. And so I had a choice. I was like, well, there's only 6 people in the cast. If I dropped out, I'm not a math major, obviously, because I didn't go to class. So that would leave that's about 85% left.
Of the cast.
I'm like 16, 70% of the cast. That's not good. So I better get right with Jesus. And so I did. And that's where the Lord really got a hold of my heart. I knew that going back to the university that I was going to at the time, getting back into my fraternity life wasn't going to be a good choice for me with my newfound focused faith. And so I decided, you know what, I need to transfer. So I transferred to the University of Sioux Falls, changed my major to religious studies and psychology, and then immediately started leading worship for college students my sophomore year of college, and have been involved in ministry ever since, 25 years full-time and 3 years part-time.
So what I heard was Laura kicked you square in the pants and said, and you guys were just dating. Yeah, we were just dating, but she had a very, very strong faith and knew I did not know this, but she actually had made a commitment to the Lord saying, if Tom goes back to USD is where I was going. If Tom goes back to USD, I'm going to break up with him because it's just not who you have for me. And she didn't tell me that because she didn't want me to be influenced by that.
And she wanted, the Holy Spirit to convict my heart and redirect my steps, and I mean, that's one of my favorite scriptures, and one that I shared actually at the Men's Summit this year, and one that I say it's my favorite, but it's also one that I really struggle with. And I think that they can coexist, is Proverbs 16:9, that we make our plans, but the Lord orders our steps. And I don't know about you, but I'm really good at making plans. And there's times though where the Lord says, those are cute. Those are really cute plans, Tom. But I've got some other steps that I'd like you to take. And I find that when I'm staying in step with the Lord, things turn out way better anyway. It doesn't mean that they're easy, but they're way better. And making the decision to leave the University of South Dakota at the time to come to University of Sioux Falls was the best choice that I could make, even though I had to give up. And this is a part of my story too. I had to give up. I was there on a full ride scholarship for academics and some other things. And I had to give all that up to come to the University of Sioux Falls, where those scholarships didn't exist for me. So the 1 year where I knew that God wanted me to, he didn't want me to go to USD, and I knew it, but I wanted to go and do my thing.
And a full ride sounds delicious.
And it was,
right?
well, it was available for me at the time at USF too.
Oh, okay.
But I wanted to go and do my own thing and really kind of party and do all that kind of stuff. And a lot of that, again, came from just wanting to get out from some of the struggles that I had in my childhood and so forth. And so not only, I just tell people this way, not only did it cost me morally, but it also cost me, financially. And instead of graduating with no debt, I graduated with well over $25,000 in debt. And if I would have just listened to the Lord at the front end, I would have saved myself a boatload of money. And, but at the same time, it's part of my journey.
Yeah.
And, I think that it's easy to look back and woulda, coulda, shoulda. But I don't know if you can say this on the Fortitude podcast, but, I was always taught, don't should on yourself.
Yeah.
And,
should on yourself.
Yeah. And I'm really good at that time. It's like, man, I should have done this. But it's not okay. You know what? We can't go back though. But what we can is we can look forward and we can say, okay, even though right now I would have made a different decision if I could go back, I can't. So now what kind of decision is I'm moving forward?
So you and Laura met at TGI Fridays, you said?
Yep.
That's officially where you met.
Yeah, she trained me to be a server, and she's still training me today.
So sounds like she may have been, was she raised in a Christian home? In a home where it was taught? And
yes and no. She was raised in a home where religion was important for a time.
Okay.
And then all of a sudden it went from religion to deep relationship at a time where Laura was really in this difficult season of even just her life of being a teen girl and trying to fit in. And then all of a sudden now we're these, this crazy Christian family. And so there was a real time of rebellion that Laura went through as a teen as well. But then when she was about 23 years old, about 22 years old, she basically, moved back home and realized I can't keep living life this way. When Jesus got a hold of her life, and she was actually convinced she was going to go to the mission field. She was going to be a missionary with the First Assembly of God Church and go and be a missionary in Africa. And she said a prayer that, if you don't bring someone in my life that you want me to be in a relationship with and move towards marriage and whatever, then I will commit my life to being single and be a missionary in Africa. Wow. And then a few months later, Tom Henderson shows up, and I'm not sure she's probably like, really? Lord, is that?
Lord, come on.
No, it's worked out pretty good.
It has. The two of you have modeled a beautiful relationship that's centered on Christ. It's very evident. And so I am grateful that Laura came from those roots enough to say, hey, to point it out is hard. It's hard to confront a situation, but she obviously was committed and wanted to be in a relationship with you. And so,
and she saw, and to be clear, our very first date, when I said, hey, I'd like us to go out on a date, whatever. And it was, she said, okay, we can, but it's going to be on a Sunday and we're going to start the date at church. And we went to church together. And, I remember her youth pastor was actually up leading worship that week. And I, of course, was doing my best singing because I just wanted to make sure that she, you know, again, she loved to hear me sing at TGI Fridays to the soundtrack. But then I'm like, this is my time to shine right next to her, right here at church, man. Let these vocal cords ring. And she looked up at me with her beautiful eyes in the middle of service. And she said, you know, I could see you doing that someday.
Oh,
and she was talking about her youth pastor. And she just said, I could see you doing that. Yeah. And and you know, at the time I had no idea, no desire to do that. Right. I was going to USD at the time and majoring in pre-med, and that was what I was going to do. That was my plan. But that was a prophetic word from her at the time that turned into me eventually becoming a youth pastor and leading worship. And here we are.
Yeah. Wow.
What a beautiful thing.
It is. It is. I love when you hear stories about people speaking something into someone's life and you're like, what? Come on. And then you look 10 years ahead and you're like, yes.
She especially said, let's not choose the high dollar thing. Yeah. Let's choose the one where we're going to be clipping coupons.
She's good at that, you said too.
Yes,
so
she is. That's great.
Your childhood looked a little different, Tom. So can you, I can just see why you were so attracted to Laura and that beautiful light, and just who you are today. Bring us back to when you were a child and just kind of what that looked like.
Yeah. And so here's the deal. Like even just Restoration Generation. So RESGEN is short for Restoration Generation. Okay. And restoration is, this is going to pave the way for telling the story because the word restoration is so important to me. And Restoration Generation is all about restoring a generation of relationships with God and with each other. That's what RESGEN has always been about. And it's kind of taken different forms and fashions throughout the 14 years. But that's what it's been about. And it's because of the restoration that God has allowed me to experience, number one, in my relationship with him, which is the most important, right? But then also the restoration that God has allowed to take place in my life between me and my father. And there was a lot of restoring that needed to be taken place in that story. When I was raised in Southern California, my parents got divorced when I was 9 years old. My mom moved us from sunny California to snowy Sioux Falls to begin our new normal. And I got involved in church and my mom was, very devoted to the Lord and raised me and my two sisters in the church, which I'm very thankful for. And she was a kindergarten teacher for 25 years here in Sioux Falls. And then she was also a server at the Westward Ho Country Club at the time and a couple nights a week just to kind of help make ends meet and to raise three kids, So we all started working when we were 14 years old at Burger King and started paying for all our stuff and just providing for ourselves because we needed to, right? I didn't know anything different. Life was pretty good. Again, I was focused on performing on the stage, performing in the classroom, because I knew if I got good grades, I knew if I did well on the stage, that people would then show me affirmation, show me that I was loved, that I was doing a good job, all those kinds of things. But when we were, when I was 14 years old, so 5 years after we moved to Sioux Falls, we got word that my father was convicted of a crime and was going to serve 8 years in prison throughout the entirety of the rest of my teen years in California. And I remember, getting that news. We actually found out through a newspaper article that we were sent, but getting that news and just really struggling with that because it's one thing to not have your dad there. I mean, I wish he would have been there. I wanted to hear how proud he was of me. I wanted him to look at me and say, man, I see such potential in you. There's just something about a dad's presence in a kid's life. Both, little girls to hear that their daddy loves them so they don't have to search for that kind of love and destructive ways elsewhere. And that they're, that they're beautiful and that he's just so proud of them and that they really can accomplish anything in their life. And for boys, they do. They want to see they have their dad speak that confidence into them and tell them, yeah, you really do have big muscles, like that kind of stuff. Right. Yeah. And I didn't have that, but now all of a sudden, now I'm like, okay, but now he's in jail and I don't know. I'm filled with a little bit of shame. I'm filled with a little bit of fear of is that going to be my life? Is that going to be, what does that look like? And so I didn't really want anybody to know that. And, so like I said, I just kind of masked it, performance, and there's not a lot of people I had that did know that.
Mm-hmm.
There was a few select friends that didn't judge me when they heard that news. But God was so faithful, and he provided a couple of men in particular. Alan and Steve are their names, and Reed, another one, Dan. These guys were like fill-in dads for me.
Yeah. And
God was so faithful in providing men in my life that saw potential in a skinny 14-year-old kid. And even when I was being a knucklehead and trying to, find worth or identity in whatever else that wasn't fulfilling and that was a moving target, they never gave up on me. And, all those guys are still a part of my life in some capacity, some much deeper than others. But God was so faithful. And then he was faithful in giving me an opportunity when I was 21 years old, when my dad was released from prison. Laura and I were married at the time. We'd only been married. We got married pretty early. I turned 21 and she was 25 at the time. And we got married and within, I think, about 8 months, we were on a plane and flying to California for me to go and meet with my dad. And I'll never forget the conversation that he and I got to have. And I say got to have because I believe that the Lord allowed it to happen.
Yeah.
It's not there's a lot of broken family stories that they weren't given that opportunity or they didn't take the opportunity when it was given. And so
what were you thinking? I like to process all of that. So let's take just a quick little step back. Did you, from the time you left and moved here, did you have a relationship in those 5 years before you found the news out with your dad?
I was able to go visit him a couple times, in the summer, kind of, for 2 weeks at a time, a couple times and see him and that. But, those were, when you're a kid and you go down, you're just excited to be with your dad, and you went to Disneyland and you grabbed some sandwiches from the gas station or whatever. Right. And so those were great visits. But a 2-week visit, it's not like that's equal to a full year's presence. Right.
And in that 2 weeks, they get to technically kind of show off as a dad because they get to do all the fun things and you're not, inundated.
And to be clear, I was showing off as a son.
Yeah.
And saying, Dad, look at me, and I was thankful for those visits. But then once that did happen, and he was in jail, and I tried to go see him when I was on that tour.
Okay.
We went down through California, and I didn't know how this thing worked. So I'm like, I talked to the directors and I said, hey, it'd be a little bit of a jaunt, a little bit off I-5, however we're going down or whatever. And they said, well, if we can make it work, we'd definitely love to do it. So I just called the prison. I'm like, hey, can I come see my dad? And they're like, yeah, we have protocols for that. You got to send in paperwork. It's like a 6-week process to get approved. And so, I had gone from being real excited about the possibility to oh man, that really stinks. I thought it was going to work out. But you know what? The reality is I always feel like God's timing is always perfect.
Always.
And when I look back on that, maybe I wasn't ready.
Yeah.
Right. Maybe I don't know what that would have been like. And so you fast forward to when I'm 20, just shy of 22 years old, and Laura and I fly out there and he and I were able to have a conversation that was very difficult out on a pier overlooking the Pacific Ocean at some cafe. We had a 3-hour lunch. Didn't eat much of my burger. That day. But, we had a conversation, and I just said, Dad, here's the deal. It hurt. I wish you would have been there, all that. But Jesus has forgiven me for everything I ever have done, I ever will do. And I want to extend that same forgiveness. And then if you're open to it, I'd love to start building this relationship again. And there's a reality of that. Of just when you have those you don't know how that's going to be received. You don't know what it's going to be. But I'm grateful that he received that conversation with grace, and grace is given, grace is received, and he said, yeah. And so for 26 years now, we've been building that relationship, and phone calls and visits and FaceTimes and that kind of thing, and I feel grateful because it's a relationship that I always desired. And the Lord has facilitated it. And I'm very thankful for it. And so that's a story that I've been able to share in public schools. Our first 5 years of RESGEN, I did public school assemblies in 28 of 58 states, or excuse me, 28 of 50. 58. Do you know that there's 58 states?
There's that math.
We said that math sneaks up on us.
I'm a preacher and I don't know geography. But so 28 out of 50 states. And, the story of the teens were able to just resonate and listen to because they're like, yeah, I've got some challenges and you kind of get it. And now to be able to speak into the lives of men and recognize that men carry stuff with them every single day, as they're going to work, as they're living in their homes, as they're doing wounds from their past or expectations that they don't feel they're meeting, or just the feeling that they need to perform in order to get love from individuals, but also from God. That's something I shared at the Men's Summit. Amos could attest to that. Even at 48 years old and being in the ministry 25 years, I still struggle with the thought that if I perform well enough, if I read my Bible enough, if I pray enough, if I preach a strong enough message from the stage, that somehow that will make God love me more. And it's not true.
No. In those moments as a young boy trying to understand, because you look at the brokenness in the family unit, and we're in a full-on spiritual battle with the devil attacking the family, husband, wife, and kiddos. And you find yourself now with your mom and your sisters. Did you in that moment, you're like, this is not how it's supposed to be. This isn't how I imagined that life would be. And did you step into the role of like the man in the household? Did you feel a heavy responsibility of that since you were the only boy in the house?
I don't know if I understood all that was there because I was pretty selfish and just like, and it wasn't more like, this isn't how it's supposed to be. It was more like, how come I don't have the kind of experience that my friends have?
Yeah.
They're all going on vacations, or they're all, they're having family, whatever. Right. But at the same time, I was very grateful that, my grandfather and grandmother lived in Spirit Lake, and they were very involved in our lives. If I ever understood that I was the man of the house, it was because my grandfather told me I was, and that I needed to be that. But I also felt very ill-equipped to do that, because at the end of the day, I was hurting so much myself, and I just wanted to go and be a kid. I wasn't really good enough to play school basketball anyway. I'm so glad, by the way, that I did not grow up where there's all these travel teams and all this craziness. Because and I think it's great experience for the kids and all that kind of stuff. But I'm like, that just seems like a lot of pressure. I would have buckled under the pressure. I'm just telling you. So but I played Y ball, and but a lot of times I couldn't participate in different things because I needed to work, and that's okay. That's all a part of the process. And my mom did it. She worked very, very hard, and she did a great job in providing for us. But there's just limitations to what we had. Yeah. But even still, so we were provided our needs, but anything that I wanted, we had to take care of that. So, which was great. That teaches resilience too. Yeah. It teaches resilience. It teaches you how to understand how money works and delayed gratification, which I think that our culture really struggles with. Yes. We don't delay ourselves anything. It's all instant gratification. And so there's a lot of great lessons that I learned. Again, looking back on, you're saying, oh, that's what I picked up from that. That really factored into the way that I parented, and in good ways and bad ways, by the way.
Yeah.
I remember having lots of conversations with my boys, and just, where I'd be so frustrated with, look at all the stuff you guys have. Why aren't you being, respectful or, full of gratitude or whatever? I never had any of this stuff, and, whatever the stuff was. Right. Yeah. And, I remember having a conversation when I was tucking my oldest son, who's now 22. And, both my boys, they're 19 and 22 now. And, they've moved to being, friends, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, I'll never stop being dad and never stop giving them advice, whether they want it or not, but I remember when he was 15 years old and he just said, Dad, don't punish me because you didn't have the childhood that I have. Mm-hmm. Don't make me suffer because I'm so glad I have a dad around. I'm so glad I have the opportunities that I have. So don't make me feel bad because I have them.
Yeah.
And I remember being like, oh, snap.
Yeah. That's good.
Yeah. And he's, that one in particular, Isaiah, he's dropped some nuggets on me, some things on, and I'm like, oh man, that is so right on, but I can't tell you you're right on because, you will definitely know that I've lost this argument then.
Yeah. They teach us a lot. Even our littlest ones are teaching us. When I think about you as a young Tom, it's just
Tommy is what I went by.
Did you go by Tommy?
Back when I was a little tyke, you bet.
Oh man. There are different people in our lives that come around us, right? And they look at us and they say, hey, it's going to be okay. Can you think back of even someone for your mom, like people that stepped in, they saw that your mom is a single mom of 3 little kids and you guys are all working hard. I kind of view it as a community, like because there is a lot of brokenness around us. How can our community, how can we wrap around families like that?
There's countless families and countless people that invested in us as individuals and then also as a family. I remember every Christmas for multiple years having the church bring gifts, and just so that we could experience that because we had, we got one present. Yeah. We got one present because that was what we could afford. And my birthday was also 5 days before Christmas. And my mom always did a good job of making sure that it wasn't like, okay, this is the joint Christmas and birthday gift, and I made it sound like she had a really low voice there, but she doesn't. She has a normal voice. But anyway, but we had church people that delivered things to us that we didn't know who they came from, and we had people that would come and just help in any way that we needed. But, like I said earlier, I think one of the greatest ways that God showed his faithfulness to me personally was having so many guys that invested in me. And that's even as I told you about the senior pastor that hired me. He was another guy. He was one of those guys that, he modeled the kind of like husband, dad, and pastor that I wanted to be like. And he taught me early on, he said, Tom, I'm going to tell you a couple things. Number one, the ministry can be a great place for lazy people to hang out because there can be low accountability. So just always ensure that you're a good steward of your time because we're all accountable to the Lord. And then he said, the other thing I want you to know is in your preaching, always make the word primary because it's the power of the word that will transform a life. Your stories, your charisma, your jokes, your woo. Yeah, I mean, all the stuff that I utilize, whatever. He said, Tom, all of that is to be supplemental to the word. It's very easy just to make that become the word, but that's all to supplement the word and help it come alive. But always make the word primary. And that was probably the most important thing that I could have learned. And so that's just one of my major focuses as I preach is just, give people the meat of the scripture and give them a love for the word. Because that's what's so important to us as we're continuing to grow into understanding what it is to become more like Jesus is just our love for the word and growing in our understanding of how that applies to our life.
Yeah. Biblical truth. Like we've gotten so far away from that. So and how long ago was that he said that to you when you were just starting out?
Yeah, I started my job there September 1st, 2001. No, wait, excuse me, 1999.
Ooh.
Yep, 1999, 2001 is when I say I was born. So all those years. So 1999, September 1 is when I started that job. And so this will be, this year, September 21, will be 25 years of full-time ministry.
So you had a different path that Tommy was going to go on, and God had a really great sense of humor in putting you exactly where Laura painted you there, and there you are now.
Yeah, exactly.
So I just think about that, the parallels in that, because your pain and things that you didn't have as a child, you flipped that, and God used that for you to step into being a youth pastor to speak into the lives of little Tommies.
Yeah, and again, that was just something that I didn't intend to do.
You're right.
But I looked at the people like Alan Keeswell, Reed DeVries, Dan Larson, who were my youth pastors and youth leaders, who just helped me so much. Mm-hmm. And I was like, well, maybe I could go and do that for other people. Yeah. And to be able to do it in the local church context, to then doing it in more of a national speaker context later on. That was just how God wanted to use me at that time. And now it's in a different way. And, even just how the way that RESGEN started was unconventional. I knew God was telling me to leave the comforts of just a steady, salary and the platform that I did have at the time. I mean, which was working at Lifelight and emceeing and speaking at the Lifelight Music Festival, which was a pretty big deal. And then going on tour and there was all these things, but I just felt like I needed to do something different. Mm-hmm. Not necessarily more impactful or anything, but just different. Mm-hmm. And so I dragged my feet for a long time. For a year and a half, I knew that I was supposed to go and launch something, not knowing what it would be, but launch something. And the crazy thing is so about a year and a half into that I went to bed one night and had a dream, and I was standing before the Lord, and he said, "Hey, great work. You're in. Well done, good and faithful servant." Stuff that we all want to hear, right? And I was getting ready to go and find my tennis courts of gold that he had for me, and all the different, amenities to my mansion. And I have a list of them, by the way. And he said, "I just wish you would have trusted me more. Mm-hmm. I just wish that you would have. I had more territory. I had different ways I wanted to use you. I just wish you would have trusted me more." And then I woke up. I thought, man, that's weird. Mm-hmm. I'm never going to eat at that Italian restaurant again. That has to be a food issue, right? So then the next night, I had the same dream again, exact. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, that Mexican restaurant's out too now. Great. What do we got here? We're down. I mean, Sioux Falls didn't have that many restaurants at that time. We're getting down on the list. Yeah. Third night in a row, I had the same dream.
Wow.
And it wasn't Laura's cooking this time, was it?
No, and it wasn't. I was out of excuses. And so the next morning I woke up and I said to Laura, I said, "Listen, I don't know what it's going to be. I don't know what we're going to call it. I don't know what it's going to look like. I don't even know if it's going to work, but we got to do it. We got to launch into this thing." You know what she looked at me and said? She looked at me and she goes, "Finally." She's like, I've only been telling you for like a year and a half to do it, and there's multiple other people that came and talked to me about that same thing. Mm-hmm. And it's just like, sometimes I find that we are the people that actually go do it or whatever. Like, we're the last people to actually be like, "Oh yeah, why don't you?" Yeah, we've only been telling you. Andrew Stanley, who you just saw at Date Night Comedy, I recorded a podcast with him just a couple days ago, and he said the same thing when he stepped into comedy. He had so many people come and saying, "Why don't you go do comedy full time and leave this, budget analyst job at some accounting office or whatever that you don't like, and then you're moonlighting at night." But it's, you fear you.
Oh man.
And the reality is I've found, and that we're going to have fear in our life, right? And a lot of times I feel like even just that, we feel guilty about being fearful because we're not supposed to, perfect love casts out fear. Man, I'm not supposed to be, man, I must not be a very good Christian. But what I've found in my life, Amos and Heather, and I don't know if you found this in yours, but even when there's been medical issues in our family that have had me fearful, whether it was when Chase broke his femur for the second time and I wondered if he was ever going to, be able to walk and run like a kid. And now he's a scholarship runner in college. Oh, God's funny. Laura with her neck surgery that she had to have and probably going to need another one in the coming years. The fear that I had of her, what happens if something goes wrong? She dies on the table. But the reality is that, and I used to feel shame almost that I'm a minister, I'm a preacher, I'm a follower of Jesus. I shouldn't have fear. But what I found, at least for me, is that I believe that fear and faith can coexist. It's just which one's going to win. Mm-hmm. And so for us, as we look at our world, and it's easy to look at our world right now and be fearful. I mean, you're talking about it's crazy out there, right? And I know a lot of people. I know you guys do too. There's a lot of people out there. They live their life in fear.
Yeah.
Like, what is happening? They won't leave their house. They're just, whatever, right? And I get it. We got to be smart. But when we live in fear, we are missing out on the opportunity to experience what God wants us to experience when we step out in faith.
Yeah.
And so I don't know who needs to hear that today. Somebody needs to hear that. But because so much time, I dragged my feet for a year and a half because of fear.
Yeah. Same.
And then 14 years later, here we are. And I'm going to be real with you. There are still days I'm fearful. Mm-hmm. When we step into new territory and we're just like, I don't know if this is going to work. We've done our best at surrounding ourselves with godly counsel, prayer, looking at God's timing, all that kind of stuff. But there's no guarantees. Mm-hmm. But I do believe that when we have our motivation being about the glorification of Christ and walking with him, and and God gets it. We're doing our best. He gets it. It's not like he doesn't know.
Yeah.
But yet we act like he doesn't understand, right?
Yeah.
But so figuring out that balance, I think, is such a huge thing.
He's such a big God, right? And we do him such a disservice by going, "Are you sure about this? Are you really sure, God?" And he's like, hello, last time I checked, I'm God.
Yeah.
Anything's possible.
Well, and if you look at the story of Scripture, and I don't know where we get this, but so many times we get this mentality of, well, God could never use me. Mm-hmm. God, well, no, that has to be somebody else because I don't have those skills or I don't have what it takes or whatever, right? But that's if you spend any time in the Word, you will see that God can literally use anyone, right?
Anyone. Mm-hmm. And he does. And he did.
And he does. And he continues to. There's no reason that God should use a person like me in any capacity. Mm-hmm. And if he uses me in some small way here in Sioux Falls, man, I'm grateful that he has.
Yeah.
And, and at the end of the day, it's his deal. RESGEN ain't my deal. Yeah. It's his deal.
Yep. And you had to surrender. Right? That's a big piece of it. People are you have to surrender those thoughts.
Totally.
Lay them at the cross and just say, let's go, use me.
Yeah, because the reality is, it starts with obviously a surrender at first, right? Hey, I'm going to surrender my life. I need forgiveness of my sin. I need a relationship with Jesus. Okay. It starts with an initial surrender, but then it comes down to a daily surrender of saying, okay, now what does this look like to walk in relationship with Christ on a daily basis? And that again is something, Proverbs 69, we can end where we began. We make our plans, but he orders our steps. And so as we start our day, think about how it changes our perspective of our day if we say, God, I just want to walk in step with you today. Yep. It's so easy for Tom Henderson to walk in front of the Lord. Just being real with you.
Yeah.
All of us. I'm a driven cat, and I can get ahead of the Lord. But God, would you, through the power of your Holy Spirit and the counsel that you've put around me, the confirmation of the saints, all these people that you put around me, God, would you help me just walk in step with you? I know that he's going to walk, one of my favorite things, and I know we got to end, but, the prayer of, walk in front of me to shine the light about where I'm going. walk beside me and hold my hand and walk behind me to catch me when I fall. And just that whole idea of just walking with Jesus. That's what he did with the disciples. And that's all he wants to do with us. We put so much pressure on ourselves to do everything right. All he says is, Tom, just walk with me today, would you? Just walk with me.
Yeah. It's amazing how you can, if you confess, you just admit to yourself, I'm going to mess up. I'm going to get in the way. And when I do, Lord, just push me out of the way. Just give me a little nudge. And I know you can fix it. I'm grateful for that because it's going to happen. It's not a matter of if, it's a win.
Yeah.
And then also when you realize that he's orchestrating things in your life, there's something so powerful about that the God of the universe, billions of people on this earth, he is somehow having an impact on you in your life. And that's really empowering, isn't it?
Oh.
And I mean, just this light in this darkness, and it's like, oh my gosh, God's doing something for me specifically. And that just gives me goosebumps.
Mm-hmm.
And yes, there's fearfulness, but the first time I felt that, I went, like something just clicked and went, this is huge. Like he's working through me specifically.
Yeah.
And I think that's really exciting. So yeah, like you said, someone needs to hear this. Take that first step. You'll get that first feeling and you'll realize this isn't just a thought that's in my head. This is God telling you to do something and he's got your back. He's going to take care of you. And yes, you'll fall down and yes, you'll get back up and yes, you'll get in the way and yes, he'll move you and yes, he'll fix the thing. And it's going to be okay because he's going to orchestrate this whole thing all the way through.
And that's the power of just, stepping forward in faith. But then the other thing that I just think is so crucial is having those people around you that, and I talk about the wisdom of the saints, confirmation of the saints. I've leaned so heavily on just people who I trust, who will tell me no, who know my heart and that walk with me as well, because that's why God gives us, the whole idea of restoring generational relation with God and with each other. Yes, all we truly need is a relationship with Jesus. Okay. Right. I mean, for salvation, but he gives us the opportunity to have a relationship with other people. Mm-hmm. And when we surround ourselves with other people, that are on the same line of thinking and moving in the same trajectory as us, that helps shape us into more of who God wants us to be at the same time as well. And as we lean on them, because we all have moments of weakness. I have dudes in my world that they are the strength. Yeah. God has provided guys in my world that I go to on the regular, especially around the men's summit, because that's when I really feel the attack of the enemy at times. Is that because he doesn't want the message to be written that God's placed in my heart, and I have mental blocks, and I have times where I'm in tears with my buddies on the phone, and they're like, "Bro, listen," and they pray for me, and they're sending me text messages, and that's my brotherhood that gives me the strength when I'm weak. So that's been super important for me as well. And I know we probably got to be done.
That's all right. That is critical. It is critical that we're walking because we're sinful creatures and because that we are under attack every day. We have to have those, our forces and our armies around us. And we have to choose them wisely.
Yeah.
That's another piece. Because God he will put those people in your life that are the incredible wise counsel, but there's also little sneakers that will pop in that are not sent from him. So we have to pray for discernment as well.
Yeah, I tell my boys all the time, we're the average of the top 5 people we hang out with, and
Amos says it all the time.
We've all heard it, I don't know how many books I've read it out of. I don't know who said that first, but, they're probably like going, do you know how many people say that? But but it's true. I mean, we do, and we never outgrow that.
Ever. Man, this has been good. Lots and lots of wisdom, little nuggets that people are going to take a lot from this. So thank you, Tom, for sharing your heart, sharing your story, and for continuing to live out step by step every day with what God has called you to do. It's beautiful to watch. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for the opportunity to share with you today.
Yeah, this is great. Thanks, Tom. Thank you so much for listening. We want to change lives through this podcast. And if you want to support this podcast or our guests, please see the links below for our Patreon and giving links.
And like and subscribe and also share our podcast as much as possible. Thank you.